Hello, my name is Naomi Higo, and in this presentation, we are going to explore how a pro and con grid can be used as a quick, easy, and effective classroom assessment technique. Pro and con grids have been used as useful teaching tools for years, but did you know that they can also be used for classroom assessment? Classroom assessment techniques, or CATs, are feedback devices, instruments that faculty can use to find out how much, how well, and even how students are learning what they are trying to teach. There are many different types of techniques. I'm going to focus on only one, the pro and con grid. The best part about using the pro and con grid for classroom assessment is that just about anyone can use it. Any course where there are questions of value, what's more important, who is right, or what's the best, or what would you do, a pro and con grid can be used. At some point in our lives, we have all used a pro and con grid. Using them for classroom assessment is fairly similar. First, you need to decide what your students will be comparing. Focus on an issue, decision, judgment, or dilemma that is relevant to your learning objectives. When writing the question or prompt, include a brief description of the issue that will get your students thinking. You should also clearly indicate how many points you expect the students to list and include from whose perspective or point of view the student should be evaluating the problem. This will make analyzing the results easier for you in the end, and I've provided you with a brief example here at the bottom of this slide. Here are some tips on how to make the pro and con grid work for your assessment. First, you must state the question or problem very clearly. Students need to know how many pros and cons you expect them to list, whose point of view you want the list made from, and if you want the list made with whole sentences or just point form. As with any assessment technique, in order to be effective, you must respond to the feedback you get from the grids as soon as possible, preferably during the next class. Finally, if you're asking students for their opinion, values, or personal beliefs, you may want to consider making the assignment anonymous. When dealing with touchy subjects or personal opinions, asking for anonymous responses can mean the difference between finding out what students think is the right answer and finding out what students really think. So what are the pros and cons to using a pro and con grid for classroom assessment? Well, the pro and con grid is good for assessing your students' learning, first of all, because it is quick and easy. It allows you, the instructor, to assess whether or not students are able to imagine more than one side to an issue, and if so, how well they can weigh the two sides. It also allows you to see which arguments students find most persuasive or troubling, and you can use these in the future to promote classroom discussion. The grid has its limitations, however. First, many issues have more than two sides. Second, students who do not see the value in the grid assessment may submit superficial responses. And lastly, when it comes to sensitive issues, some students may reject the idea that there can even be two sides to the argument. So now, you've picked your topic, you've handed out the assignment, and the students have returned their filled out grids. How do you assess the results? First of all, remember, we're not grading the students on whether their grids are correct or not. We're using the grids to assess our students' learning. And we assess for two reasons. One, to gather evidence to inform instructional decisions, and two, to encourage students to try to learn. To assess the results from your grids, start by listing the points students have come up with and do a simple frequency count. In my example here, point A was listed by 5 students, point B was mentioned by 20, point C was mentioned by 18, and point D was only brought up by 1 student. Which points were mentioned the most and which points were mentioned the least? Are there some points that are missing altogether, or have students included some points that you regard as extraneous? Missing information or points that were mentioned fewer times may need to be revisited. Reflect on your teaching. Compare how you taught the points that were mentioned most frequently to how you taught those that were mentioned less frequently or forgotten altogether. Points that are mentioned a lot are a good indication of what your students find most interesting and can be used to spark further debate in the future. I said this CET was quick and easy, so here it is again in 5 simple steps. Step 1. Pick an issue, judgment, or dilemma that is relevant to your learning objectives. Step 2. Write the prompt or question, including what point of view you want students to respond from and how many points you're expecting them to list. Step 3. Compare the students' grids to your own and to each other's. What points did students hit and what points did they miss? Step 4. Reflect on your teaching. And step 5. Respond to the results of your assessment quickly. When teachers know how students are progressing and where they are having trouble, they can use this information to make necessary instructional adjustments, such as reteaching, trying alternative instructional approaches, or offering more opportunities for practice. Thanks for joining me. My name again is Naomi Higo, and I wish you the best of luck using the Pro and Con Grid as a classroom assessment technique in your class. Thank you again.